next area in our goals is reliability, to improve our performance, to improve the performance of the electric system. Our engineering and operations group is primarily responsible for that, and Fred Terwilliger, our director of engineering and operations, and his management team, Bill Fessemeyer, our manager of engineering, Jeff Fleming, our line superintendent, and Matt Alderson, our manager of safety and operations support. Just a brief aside, if I could, this particular goal is about reliability for certainly, and we have a whole entire goal that I'm not going to discuss tonight that is about safety and compliance and record keeping. But that goal is primarily about our participation in the NRECA Rural Energy Safety Achievement Program, keeping our records, making sure we're doing the things that we have to from a compliance standpoint. But I mentioned that goal here because this goal that we're talking about, this reliability goal, is where I really feel that our safety plays a bigger role. It's one of the most important aspects of what we do. We have practices, we have procedures, we have training, and they all revolve around working safely. And it's most notable in the pursuit of this particular goal. This year, or 2012 and so far in 2013, we've completed some major system improvements. First, our Boyers line, and secondly, we've begun our Fredericksburg line rebuild. We've continued our line clearance tree trimming program and our pole inspection program to maintain an 8 and 10-year cycle respectively. These particular programs are very important. There is nothing more important to the reliability of our system than trimming trees. I know that sounds ridiculous because we transmit electricity, but keeping the trees off the line and stopping them from tipping over and taking wires and poles down, there's nothing that's going to be a bigger bang for our buck than doing that. So it's very important that we maintain that program. I mentioned Fred's favorite program here a moment ago, and I want to make sure he's listening now because I want to talk about the 900-mile wire replacement project that we've been discussing, certainly since I've been here and for many, many years prior to that. It continued through 2012, but I'm very happy to say, and I'm sure Fred's even happier, that as of right now, that project is complete. 900 I want to make a note about outages here. This is a good place for it. 2012 was a particularly difficult year for us. We had a couple good years in a row. 2010 and 2011 were both very good years as far as our numbers of outages were concerned. 2012 was a bit of a struggle because we had 3 very significant storm events. It's a lot like ripping a big Band-Aid off fast. 2013 summer hasn't been quite that same luxury. This year we've had more like we're taking the Band-Aid off as slowly as we possibly can. And I gotta tell you, I share your frustration because it hurts us too. I will tell you that the numbers are very similar as far as the outage time is concerned. As a matter of fact, we're actually a little bit ahead of last year as far as outage time, but it certainly doesn't feel like that because we've had a constant stream of relentless storms that have come through our system. But I do want to point out about that all of these projects that I'm talking about, the tree trimming that we do, these major system improvements, if we had not been doing these, the outages that we've experienced these last 2 years would have been dramatically worse, dramatically so, which is evidenced by the fact that many, many years ago, all utilities, but even Central, was behind the times in maintaining their system. And as we've picked that up, you've recognized that our system reliability has improved dramatically. I'm going to combine a couple of goals here real quickly to move on. The identification and meeting of targets for member satisfaction and the creation and implementation of communication and education strategies. There are two departments that oversee the majority of those. One is our member services area, that is Department Director Lisa Hoover and our member services supervisor Janet Guthrie are overseeing that group. And then Chris O'Donnell oversees our member community relations department. She's as the director. In these areas, again, I mentioned I've combined these two, but these 2 areas of our company are the most direct contact with all of you. Our member services folks are the ones that answer the phone every time you call, and boy, I tell you what, I can't say enough about how they do their job. They're really very wonderful in that. Hopefully you saw the Smart Hub demonstration that was out underneath our tent earlier today. That's something that's gone live internally already, but come next month, come September, we're going to go live to our membership with that, and that's going to allow you, I want to make sure I get this right, it's going to allow you to do some, find some information on your account that's been previously unavailable to you. You're going to be able to see your daily usage, you're going to be able to see your outage history, you're going to be able to report an outage electronically that way as well. All functionality that didn't previously exist or you didn't have direct access to. There's other functionality as well, but I only have that portion of the list. Our electronic payments, we continue to increase the number of members that are paying electronically. We're up to 41% as of the end of 2012. That reflects a very large savings in administrative costs of not having to handle checks on a daily basis, or as many checks on a daily basis. And lastly, in this area, our newsletter and other correspondence is experiencing increasing readership, and the expanded functionality of our website is proving to be very valuable. We're seeing a lot of you accessing it more often, and if you haven't done it recently, please do. There's a lot of information out there, and we try to get information out to everybody in a timely manner in that regard. I know you all love my Power Lines article. There we go. But that tends to be about a month behind, and really my writing skills aren't what they used to be. The next section is the utilization of information technology and the ensure our efficient use of our human resources. And Chris Kosman, our Director of Information Technology, and Stephanie Deal, our Director of Human Resources, are those that oversee these areas primarily. I'm smiling because it's ironic that I mentioned these two goals together because I consider these the things and the people. But we just went through an organizational review, and these two departments used to be one department. Human Resources and Information Technology together doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but we did bust them apart, and it's proven to be very valuable for us. The separation of these departments has allowed us to expand the function while maintaining emphasis in each of them. In the area of IT, we've completed upgrades to our financial and mapping software. We've completed a virtualization project. We've improved our cybersecurity and identified underutilized technology that we have available to us that we're going to start using. In Human Resources, frankly, we've completed an organizational structure review that partially led to the split of these two departments. And we've transitioned health insurance providers, and we're making a long-term plan for benefit strategy, and we're expanding the scope of what this department's able to do for us. A lot of work has come from those two. The last of the goals that I'm going to touch base about is the implementation of the project planning. And I think I mentioned this at last year's meeting, but Mitzi Ivankovich, a longtime employee of Central Electric, has been named our project management specialist. And with this approach to project planning, we're able to improve our communication between departments. We're able to get things prioritized and done across the company instead of little silos working on just their piece. It's proven to be very valuable in helping to maintain steady and continuous improvement. As you can see, a lot goes into maintaining the balance that we talked about. I hope it's obvious that none of this is possible without the people that are involved. I'm never able to recognize all of the efforts of all of the people individually or adequately, frankly, in this presentation. But please let me mention a couple of groups since I have a few moments. It starts with our biggest group, and that's you, our members. 25,000 strong and dedicated to the cooperative difference. Then our board of directors, your member-elected representatives. They make sure that we, as a staff, are staying focused on what's important to you. Lastly, the staff here at Central Electric. My respect and admiration for them has been magnified immeasurably by the heartfelt empathy and continued dedication that they have demonstrated following the horrific tragedy that we experienced in the loss of our coworker and friend. Excuse me. Perhaps the best example of that dedication was in the weeks immediately following the accident, when the extreme and constant weather that I just mentioned required our journeymen to be out working to restore power relentlessly. If you think being out of service more than once or twice was very frustrating, try answering that phone and going out and restoring that power when a good friend of yours has just been electrocuted doing the very same thing. This is already my fourth annual meeting, and which is pretty inconceivable to me. It seems that just a moment ago I introduced myself to you all and waved a terrible towel above my head saying I'm a Steeler fan. I still am a Steeler fan. I'm not overly hopeful for the season ahead, but I am still a Steeler fan. A lot's happened in the last 3.5 years, most of it good. Those of you that are here today are active participants in your cooperative. So I know, like I said before, much of what I've said tonight is preaching to the choir. So on behalf of myself and all of the employees of your Central Electric Cooperative, thank you for your continued support in another great year. Now we're going to open up to questions from the floor here in just a moment, and there's a microphone down front if you're going to have one. But before I ask anybody that has one to step forward, there were a few questions submitted in advance that I'm going to take a moment to answer. There were several questions that were very specific to individuals that we've already contacted those individual members and responded to, but these were broader questions that we felt would be valuable for all of you to hear the answer to. One of them is, if the rates were raised 6.5% 18 months ago, why another 5.5%? I think I talked about that just a little bit earlier, that our board took it very seriously and looked at doing a 2-year rate increase to begin with, but thought that things were just too volatile to make that kind of commitment ahead of time. So we waited the full 18 months instead of doing it in January of 2013, but we did it, but our costs have continued to increase, and we needed to do that to make sure that we met all those requirements that I mentioned as well. Do power outages harm my television or computer? Well, power disturbances aren't just outages, but they're often associated with outages. A disturbance could be a surge in power, it could be a dimming of the power as well, and certainly a rapid dim or a rapid surge in the power or decrease in the voltage could have some impact on your individual appliances. But we dedicate a large amount of our resources to helping protect that. Our system has a lot of devices that are going to interrupt power quickly to make that not happen. But it's always a good idea. We always recommend that members consider purchasing quality surge protection for sensitive equipment and often very expensive equipment in your home. If you do take that advice, by all means make sure it meets all the required standards, the UL standards for surge protection. There's a question regarding, will our electric costs go down now that natural gas is becoming plentiful and cheaper? I probably should ask some of our politicians in the audience to answer that question, but I think I'll take a stab at it. Not necessarily so is the answer I have in front of me, and that's because unfortunately some of our long paid-for coal plants are having to shut down because of additional regulations that are being put on them. But certainly the long-term hope would be that an influx of additional generation would have a long-term benefit to the power cost. But in the short term, no, I'm afraid the answer is not going to have a direct impact on our rate. And I think the last question I have before we move on is, how come you put my refund in my bill when I always pay my bill? Well, a few years back, more than a few years back, Central Electric decided that our board and staff suggested that we put those refunds, the capital credit retirements, on your bill instead of sending out checks, very simply because it costs about $10,000 a year to mail out checks to all of our members. So that $10,000 a year can then instead be included in the capital credit retirements, and they get a little bigger because of that. So certainly there are members that are no longer on our system, so they can't have that put on their bill, so we do have a few checks that go out, but that's the reason we've transitioned to try to save a little bit more money. With that, that's the last of these questions. If there are any questions from the floor, I'd ask you to step up and... Yes, sir.
Yes, Matt. About a month ago, I received an additional mailing resulting something about the ballot. There was some confusion. I just wanted an explanation. Was that just Clarion County, or was that co-op wide?
Thank you for asking the question. Yes.
That resulted, my mailing to myself was 48 cents. If you mailed that to 25,000 people, that's $12,000 that the co-op incurred, not
right.
With the additional labor that it took to produce reduce that.
Right, well, a couple things to that question. No, it was not all of our membership, but it was not limited to one county or another. The question that was asked, in case you couldn't hear, there was an issue with some of the ballots that went out, and it was an issue of a second name on the ballot. Some of you received ballots that had your correct name, your correct address, your correct member number, and even your individual ballot number. But it had either no name where there was often a second name or an erroneous second name, someone that you've never heard of. Here's what happened. We have a file that we send to the people who print our ballots for us because we as a company stay completely out of the election process. That's something that we want to keep very separate. We don't want to give any bias from a staff point of view. But we send that file out, and they use that file to print the ballots, and then they mail the ballots directly. When that file is sorted, in this particular case, the one field that had a second name in it. Let me use an example of myself. I'm not a member, but if I came in on the original file on line 100 and my spouse's name was listed on line 100 with me, when we sorted that, everything sorted together except the second name. So my